Mgtow, or Men Going Their Own Way, is a movement that's been growing considerably over the last few years. One concern that Mgtow have to at some point consider is the last two words of men going their own way and how this relates to them. Going your own way is looked upon by some as lonely bachelor evenings in front of a television eating out of a pizza box, contemplating what could have been had things been different. It's a serious concern that turns some people away from Mgtow and even converts some Mgtow into non-Mgtow. Feminists and other anti-men groups, when criticizing Mgtow, are quick to use this against them. This has widely been known in the manosphere as part of something we call shaming language. Shaming language is an attack on the person or group's character and will usually involve implying or saying outright that the only reason this person is this way is that they are not good enough. They are not good enough to pick up women or be successful at their job. They are not good enough to succeed in society, and they are not good enough to be everything that society wants them to be. It is important not to underestimate the power of shaming language. While many will be unaffected by it, some will be strongly affected. This is because the reasons for its strength or weakness have very little to do with the user. Instead, they have much more to do with the fear of the person receiving the attack. Franklin Roosevelt said in 1933, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself." I think this is a really important thing to consider, especially when talking about Mgtow. To understand why you are afraid, you need to first understand what you are afraid of. If you don't understand this, then you will remain afraid and powerless to defeat the problem. When someone feels that they will be alone because they are Mgtow, they are not seeing the bigger picture. It is not Mgtow here that is the problem. Being alone isn't something that just people in Mgtow are worried about. Overall, I would say from what I have seen that more people outside of Mgtow are worried about loneliness than inside it. This doesn't of course prove Mgtow's superiority in any way. We need to go deeper than this because the fear of loneliness predates Mgtow. As members of a tribe, we would be afraid to go alone because being alone increases our chances of death. Without others to protect us, we are at risk from predators and our environment. An outcast from the tribe has a much greater chance of death than someone integrated into its customs. In this case, the fear of loneliness itself is a symptom of the fear of death. When you start to think about these things, you start to realize that most fears can be traced back to a fear of death. In fact, it could be put forward that without death, there would be no fear. That is something interesting to consider and something that I don't claim to know the answer to. Now, coming back to this fear of death, and therefore loneliness, we can surmise that even with all of our ancestors' brilliant protections, safeguards, and medicine used to prevent death, death still happened. People still died. Some died sooner than others, but they all eventually died. Loneliness is a little bit different because it's more of a concept rather than an action. However, we can all be assured that at some point in our lives we will be lonely. We can also be assured that at some point in our lives we will be alone. Some people will be alone for less time than others, but all people will at some point be alone. Marriage is shaming tactics spearhead in this, and some would claim it as a solution to loneliness. However, the divorce rate continues to rise day by day, and so the old concept that marriage is until death do we part doesn't hold any weight anymore. Marriage will eventually end, and being married is no means to ensure that you won't be lonely. Websites like Ashley Madison wouldn't exist if everyone who is married did not feel lonely. People wouldn't cheat on marriage or a relationship if they did not feel alone. People in a city full of hundreds of thousands of people can be lonely. Marriage itself, we can see therefore, is not a solution, never will be, and never was. The question of loneliness must be understood in the terms of fear, and thus we must ask the question, why are we afraid? Who said that being alone had to be a bad thing? The people who use shaming language want you to think it's a bad thing because they themselves want to believe it. It justifies their life choices if they can make other people look inferior. As one Mgtow to another, I must tell you that in being alone you have nothing to be afraid of. Also, as a man going his own way, who has said that you have to go it alone? You can have friends of any gender, but the idea is to go your own way. You don't need to be defined by other people, and you don't need to let shaming language define you. You are the only judge of what you should or shouldn't be. Don't let cowards shape who you are. Don't let cowards shape who you are. Don't let cowards shape who you are.